Welcome back to Making Space with Angela Dragon. I am delighted to have Whitney Leigh Morris here today, where we got into a rich conversation about right sizing and co-stewardship. Also, stay tuned for a special treat with Grandma's Second Chances, where I have a special guest and a special, just quick little segment in the middle of this episode so you can learn about how to give some of your items a second chance. Whitney Leigh Morris is my guest today, and I'm going to read her bio so I get it right. Whitney Leigh Morris is a creative director, digital storyteller, author, and small space expert who is passionate about sustainable, right-sized homes, co-stewardship, and multi-generational living. So, of course, these are all topics that are near and dear to my heart. And Whitney and I met through the Gainesville Giving Garden when I was on the board there, and I'm still volunteering there occasionally. And I just immediately, I was like, she's my person. She's one of my people in the world. And so I'm so excited to have an excuse really to chat with her today. And then you get to benefit from some of her wisdom and knowledge in these fields. So welcome, Whitney.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And yes, when we found out about one another and first saw each other, it was definitely a connection that needed to be made.
Yes, I was like, you do
developed.
What?
I know.
How have I not met you yet? And you live in Gainesville.
Yeah, I know. And we were constantly at the garden at different times.
Yeah.
So yes, it was meant to be though. It happened when it was supposed to happen.
I agree. I agree. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah.
So I would love to start by just for the terminology, right?
Yeah.
So some of those words, even in your bio, I'm like, I think I know what those mean, but I feel like our listeners, viewers might not know what those things mean. So how would you define right sizing?
Yeah. So transparently, it's downsizing, right? Most of the time it's downsizing. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that term is meant to take the pressure off the square footage and more turn it towards the focus towards what type of space and size space feels right for you and your needs, as opposed to like just bigger is better or just smaller is better. You know, it's really supposed to put the weight on the intention of it as opposed to the square footage of it. But usually it's downsizing.
Yeah, right. And I don't remember the statistics that I read recently, but it was something about like the average home 100 years ago or even 50 years ago was like 10 times smaller than what we have.
Yeah, sure.
You know, like in the number of
America,
clothes and all of those things are like, we just keep getting like bigger vehicles, bigger closets, it's like everybody's like, I want a giant house. It's like, well, why? You know, and then my team and I, of course, are in clients' homes all the time, and they're like, this is too much to manage. I can't keep up with it. I can't find what I need because I have 5 closets full of stuff. So we hear a lot of, you probably are the same. I'm pretty anti-consumerism. Not entirely. I mean, like I like nails and hair and clothes. Like I love fashion. I love collecting books and earrings. And I still consider myself to be a minimalist in most areas of my life with most things. So do you consider yourself to be a minimalist?
No, I think it's just, I mean, it depends on, for me personally, it depends on the space, right? Like, I mentioned to you before that my family and we lived in a cottage that was under 400 square feet in Venice for 10 years. And
400 square feet.
It was less than, and it was great. And actually we would have stayed there forever if the stars had aligned. But in that space, for example, there's just not a lot of space for even functional decor without it feeling like it's kind of consuming you alive. So, you know, in that space, people would walk in and probably say it was a minimalist space. But to me, it's less about the philosophy and more about just outfitting your space with intention. And so, you know, long story, a long answer to a short question is I wouldn't consider myself a minimalist, nor would I consider myself a maximalist. It's more just really what's right for you and hopefully what's right for the greater world beyond your house as well, you know, thinking from both of those angles.
Yeah,
so
I love that you brought that piece into it of thinking about the impact on our planet.
Yeah.
Because that's something. So I have a workshop called Confronting Clutter, where I guide people through a handful of questions about, you know, what is causing you stress in your home, and imagine your home, use a magic wand and imagine your home cleared out of all the things that are not serving you, things that are broken, things that you don't love. And part of that is in the middle. I try to put it right in the middle because it's like the Debbie Downer portion of the workshop of like, here's how much trash we're making. Here is how much landfill waste we're creating with clothing and electronics, and thinking about the human impact, like on other people we never will meet, where there are like barely any labor rules and standards, like the human impact as well as the environmental impact. Do you want to say anything more about your feelings on that. I imagine you do.
I have a lot of feelings on that. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think that it's important to acknowledge that the goal is never to shame anyone, right? Like
Right.
we're living in a society in America that really makes it difficult to see all the tendrils behind the American dream picture, right? So it's never about shaming people, just more about like all of us together becoming aware and caring and creating change because we care about what we're learning. So um, I try to remind people of a product's entire life cycle, right? And that
Mhm.
begins in a way with exactly what you're talking about. People who is making this. Are they in safe conditions? Are they being paid fair wages? And then at the end of the product's life cycle, is all this stuff being dumped in communities that are marginalized, that are continually trashed by richer communities or richer countries? And so, I try to remind people that when you're looking to acquire anything, like what's the entire product life
Mhm.
cycle? So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on that.
I
That's
bet.
just the Cliff's Notes, but yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. We
Yeah.
are very aligned.
Yeah,
Like, I'm like, as you're
absolutely.
saying this, of course, I'm like, yes, I feel the same way. So in my workshop, I have, and I got this from a book, and honestly, I've read so many books on all these topics that I don't remember what book, so I can give it credit. But
Mhm.
it talks about the three gates test of when you shop, and I know you have way more questions that I want to that are in a blog post I read from yours. But
Mm,
the questions, if you're out shopping or online shopping,
mhm,
ask yourself. Where will I store it? Like, do I
mhm,
even have room for this new thing?
mhm,
How long do I expect to keep it? And how will I dispose of it someday? So,
mhm.
even just those initial three questions,
Yeah.
I feel like that has helped me tremendously
Mhm,
in not buying so much stuff. Because how many
mhm.
times have we bought something just like for the little hit of dopamine or because we're tired or bored or what, it's like the
You need it that
emotional.
day. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
like
like,
just that one time. Yeah.
yep, I've been guilty of that, of course,
Mhm,
myself too. And so even just asking myself those three basic questions has been super helpful. Even just
mhm,
imagining, like, is this going to end up in a landfill in 6 months?
mhm.
Right. And so in my workshops, I also, I think you're going to appreciate this. I call it the scale of fast fashion t shirt to cast iron skillet.
Yeah,
Like, where does it
that's a
fall?
great
Where does it
spectrum.
fall on the
Yeah.
scale? Like, the cast iron skillets are eternal. We can
Yeah.
have those for like a million generations. And then fast fashion t-shirt, it's like you wear it twice and it falls apart in the wash or has a hole
Mhm,
in it or just looks faded or tattered or whatever. And
mhm,
it's just, not worth it. It's like, oh, this is only $10 or whatever. Again, I've been guilty of these things in the past, so no
sure.
judgment to anybody.
Mhm,
And it's like thinking about, where does this thing fall on that scale?
mhm,
And is it worth it? Or could I save up a little bit more money and buy a nicer thing that's actually going to hopefully last?
mhm.
So I don't know if you remember your post because I don't remember how long ago it was, but you had other questions that
Oh,
people can ask
yes.
themselves.
I like to update that post every year actually
That's
because
hilarious.
sometimes I just forget to include something, or sometimes, of course, we're always learning new things and looking at things that we believed or have said through new lenses and hopefully like
Mhm.
broader lenses. So I think that those three questions are essential. And I think some other great questions to ask, and it's such a great way to prevent clutter from accumulating in your home. And that's a whole nother topic that I'm sure we will cover. But
Yes, for sure.
but I also like to ask, like, can I borrow it, whether it's from an institution like the library or from a neighbor or a friend or whatever? Can I borrow it? Is this something that I kind of have a version of it already at home and can like make do with what I already have rather than
Mhm.
acquiring something new? If I can't borrow it, can I rent it? Is there some way if I'm looking at something that I really can't DIY, is there some way to source it from a local artisan or a local secondhand
Mhm.
resource? Can you get it on like depending on your community, an offer up or a Facebook marketplace or a buy nothing group,
Mhm.
depending. So I think that there are so many questions that we can ask ourselves to really make us more responsible stewards of not just our individual homes, but the greater home we all share. And once we start to ask ourselves those questions, it becomes practice. Like it is work at first, like so many good things, it's
Mhm.
work at first. And then once you've absorbed it into your bloodstream and it becomes second nature, then
Mhm.
it's no longer work. It's pretty liberating because the amount of
Mhm.
time, money, space, that you save or get back by not, investing so much energy and so many
Mhm.
resources into searching for things, acquiring things.
Yes.
You just get so much more life back, I think.
You get so much more life back. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I found when I think about, okay, can I borrow this? That's probably one of my favorite questions to ask. If I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I want this thing, I need this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, do I need to own it though?
Uh-huh.
Like my
Right.
closet, my house, the house that I live in, I rent an apartment that's in a big historic house.
Cool. Uh-huh.
And it's a big space, but my closet is for me and my fashion needs is tiny.
Mhm.
So I'm always like, okay, do I have room in my closet, especially for clothing or accessories or whatever else? And thankfully, one of my best friends, I call her the maximalist to my minimalism.
Uh-huh.
She's a burlesque performer and producer, among other things, and she's on
Awesome.
my team at
Awesome.
Simplify Home Organizing. So I'm always like, do I want to buy a new costume piece, or do I want to buy this like specialty thing for a themed event or whatever I'm dressing up for? And I'm like, or can I borrow it from my best friend?
Right.
Right? And she likes being the resourceful person in the community. And so I've realized it's not like it's just saving me money, even though it saves me money. It saves me like time, energy, effort from going to the store. And instead, I have an excuse to visit my friend.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Like it's when we think about borrowing things or thinking about being well resourced in community, that helps us connect with other people.
1000%.
It's so beautiful.
Right. And it's interesting that it's sad, I think, that so many of us have to retrain that muscle, right?
Yeah.
Because that's it should be just kind of a foundation of being human, right? Like of
Yes.
sharing resources, and in doing so, communicating with one another, getting to better understand and know one another, support one another. And so, yeah, I mean, what a great excuse it is to lean deeper into community, but I also feel like it's a bummer that we're having to retrain that
Yeah.
muscle. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like, hey, it's okay. We're getting there. We're doing it,
Yeah.
we're doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a great way to connect. I agree with you.
Totally. And like,
Mhm.
yeah, the big like capitalism machine, it's like, just buy it on Amazon. It'll be here in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's so much easier. And it's like that is even still for me. And I've been practicing this for 12 years. I've been doing this work.
Uh-huh.
And so I've seen clutter and how it impacts people for 12 years. It's deep in my psyche to not want to have those behaviors,
Mhm.
but I still find myself being like, oh, I want, all of a sudden I have this urge to buy a thing. I
Mhm.
have a new project at my house and I'm like, oh, I could just order it on Amazon. And I'm like, what? Or I could go to Repurpose Project or Reuse Planet or
So fun.
like,
Mhm.
I love that Gainesville has such a wealth of these kinds of resources. And sometimes I forget until I hear about other places, like even really big cities
Yeah, yeah,
that have
yeah.
nothing like
The
the
repurpose
resource
practice.
library
Mhm.
that we have here with Repurpose Project and that
Yeah.
whole, all of their businesses. So I'm still practicing,
Mhm.
of course. We're always learning together. I'll tell you one quick story that just came up for me. It's a little bit relevant to what we were just talking about of connection. So I love buy nothing groups.
Mhm.
You're probably familiar with those.
Yeah.
I joined probably at the very beginning of COVID.
Mhm.
And I was kind of like, sometimes it's a pain. Sometimes people are flaky, just like anything on the internet, even like selling things on the internet. Sometimes people are flaky. But I was just like, oh, I really want to just see what's happening in there and then occasionally donate things and occasionally ask for things. And I think there's beauty in, so for, actually, let me just explain it. For people that don't know Buy Nothing, it's a national, I think, nonprofit organization, and they have small Facebook groups that are hyper local. It's like your community, not just your city, but as small as they can get it within, a tiny little subdivision or community. And it's no buy, sell, trade. There's no bartering at all. It's either you're asking for a thing that you need or want, a gift, so you're giving something to a neighbor, offering up something, or gratitude. And that's it. Those are the only three things you can post. And so at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was all up in Buy Nothing. It was like
Mhm.
keeping me connected because I was just by
Mhm.
myself
Mhm.
and had no money and had no work. I was like, like, what am I doing? And so I posted in there, I was giving away a whole bunch of egg cartons because I eat eggs a lot. And I
Mhm.
had a stash, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to the farmer's market because it was shut down.
Mhm.
Who wants these egg cartons? I'm sure somebody has chickens or school projects, whatever. And so this woman, who I still have 6 years later have not met in person, she says, yes, I would love those. And I gave her my address and she picks them all up and she left me a dozen eggs from her
Awesome.
chickens.
That's a great trade. That is the
And
best
like,
trade.
she didn't have to do that. I
Yeah.
was just like happy to share the thing that I had that I didn't want to throw in the garbage.
Yeah.
And so for years, Whitney, years, this has been 6 years. Okay, I know her name.
God.
but I don't even know her face.
That's
She has a picture of
amazing.
presumably her dog on her Facebook profile.
Uh-huh.
And so every month or two or whatever, I get to have a bunch of egg cartons and I'm like, hey, do you want to pick some more egg cartons up? And then she leaves me some eggs. Sometimes she
I
leaves
love
2
that.
dozen, and eggs are expensive. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, please. But it just brings me so much joy
Mhm.
because I'm like, I don't even know her. This woman is so sweet. And there was one time that I was going to put the egg cartons out and I was sick. I got the flu like years ago, or probably had COVID or something. And I messaged her and was like, hey, I forgot to put the egg cartons out. Like, please, can you come back in a couple days? And she's like, oh, of course. And she's like, do you need soup or anything?
I mean,
And then she
that's
left me eggs
amazing.
and soup. I'm crying now thinking about it. It was just like so touching,
Right.
and it gives me hope. Like, anytime we're resourcing from within our community, right?
Mhm.
Like the what is it? The fundamental unit of community is the neighbor.
Mm.
It's something like that. There's some quote like that that might be a little different, but it's, thinking about neighbors. Like, how many of us don't even know our neighbors these
Yeah.
days, right?
Sure.
Like people that live in big cities and you don't know the person in the apartment upstairs.
Mhm. You share a wall or a ceiling or yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and sometimes I get people like, I'm an extrovert, obviously, so I like interacting with people and meeting new people. But I didn't know some people really love that feeling of privacy.
Mhm.
And there's a loneliness epidemic. It's
Mhm.
undeniable. So
Mhm.
thinking about when we need resources, asking our community for support, I
Mhm.
think is such a nice way to do that. And then you can ask and practice asking for
Mhm.
what you need
Yeah.
in the world, which for a lot of women in particular is really hard. We've
Yes.
been conditioned to not do that.
Mhm.
So I think it's good practice for that, and also then you get to connect with people, and you get to receive stuff that you want, and that's
Right.
such
And
a
also the
joy.
practice in reverse, right? The practice of offering things up that you no longer need. Because I feel like when it comes to searching for community and searching for a place and, just giving and contributing as
Mhm.
long as it's needed, as long as you're not throwing trash at somebody, like
Yes.
that can be such a wonderful feeling that fills a void. And then when you do ask for things, especially if you have been conditioned, as you mentioned, to not ask for things, when you do ask for things, then you feel like it's like, oh no, this is just symbiotic. This is just how it happens. Not, I don't mean it in the transactional way. I just
Yeah.
mean like, no, this is just part of the ebb and flow of life and the cycle of a day. And
Giving and receiving.
yeah, absolutely. So even if it's that you don't need something, but one day down the road you will. And in the meantime, it feels really great to find responsible homes for things.
Yes.
Like it's also great to practice it that way too, even if there's nothing that you need in the meantime, in that instant. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
That's
glad you
awesome.
brought that last piece up because that's one of the things that we talk to clients about often.
Mhm.
Because a lot of our clients are mindful people, even if they haven't necessarily been mindful consumers,
Mhm. Sure.
but they're mindful people in the world. And they're like, oh, I want to donate this, or this thing is not serving me, or this thing doesn't work for me anymore. I don't want it, but I don't want it to just go to a landfill.
Yeah.
And so sometimes what I'll walk them through, or what my team will walk them through, is the idea of visualizing that thing in a thrift store.
Mhm.
And just some of it requires a little bit of like faith and trust in the magic of the universe, of like, okay, if I release this thing into the world, someone who needs it or could treasure it will actually find it. And I
Mhm.
could tell you a dozen stories of like absolute literal magic when
Mhm.
somebody let something go and then like a week later somebody's like, hey, I'm looking for this thing. And I'm like, oh, we just donated one of that really random, unique thing to Haven Hospice Attic, or
Uh-huh.
Repurpose
I know
Project,
where you
or
can
Humane
find it. Yeah.
Society. Yeah, I'm like, oh, it's like,
1000%.
I'm like, it might take them a day to process it, but like, go get the thing. And then the
Yeah.
person goes and gets the thing that they really needed. And I've been that person shopping in thrift stores a ton of times where I'm
Mhm.
like, thank you, person who just donated 10 shirts in my size from Express. Like,
Whatever the case may be. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, clearly this was all the same person's clothing. And yes, please, these are mine now.
That happened to me at Voltaire. I had never been to Voltaire, and which is a delightful little coffee shop in
I
downtown
love it.
Gainesville. And I'd heard about it in part because of their great food and coffee, but also because one of the proprietors is French, and so
Mhm.
because my family spends a lot of time in France, some people had mentioned her to me, and I'd never met her. Anyway, so I walk into Voltaire for the first time, and I'm sitting down and I'm having my coffee and I'm looking around because they have all this secondhand repurposed decor. It's very
Mhm.
beautifully
I
done.
love it there.
It's really a warm place. And I'm looking over at this lovely corner with like a scrubbed table and like mismatched beautiful chairs and a
Mhm.
healthy tree. And I'm looking, and there is some stuff that was from our home from like 2 weeks
Stop
earlier
it.
that I had given to either Reuse Planet or Repurpose Project that we had used and loved, and I had gotten it secondhand in the first place. So I don't even know how many like lives that those items have lived at this point. but they're sitting there and they're very distinctly, like
Yes.
they were very unique
You're like,
designs.
that's for my house.
Yes. And then I look up over one side of the counter and there's a shelf that we sourced secondhand in Micanopy. And then we painted a certain color that one of my kids wanted to paint it. And we'd had it on the wall. And then eventually we needed to rearrange stuff for the kids. And that was now holding like cute coffee cups and looked like this amazing, usable, functional vignette on the wall. It was so beautiful. And so then I was like, I need to talk to somebody here. And I finally met this woman who I had been wanting to meet. And I was like, by chance, did you get this thing here? And she's like, yes. And I told her the story about it. So then she knew some of the provenance. And it was really delightful. And then we got to, like meet one another. And it was being, I was able to see those things out in the community where they can be appreciated by so many more people. But I think too, when it comes to letting stuff go, one thing that it's on topic and off topic. It's topic adjacent.
Yeah, perfect.
One thing is that I think a lot of the time when people are letting stuff go and they're having a hard time picturing what's going to happen to it, I do think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of donations do go to a landfill regardless. And I don't mean that as a deterrent for people. I mean it as actually inspiration for when we are looking at that full product life cycle to make sure that when we are acquiring something, it's something that isn't destined for a landfill because of its quality, right? And so there are certain things that are just immediately going to be thrown into a trash bag because of the state that they're in or the way that they were made or what they're made with.
Greetings, Dr. Eleanor Robin here. And a while back, I took a decluttering masterclass with Angela, and the experience was life-altering. Now, I was probably ready for a big change at the time, but I don't think I was expecting the change to be as big. Because as part of that class, I really came to believe that it was the task of this stage of my life. The task was to rid myself of a lot of the possessions that I had accumulated during the first 2/3 of my life. And I went whole hog. I became an extremist. I ended up with an auctioneer license, and I'm now holding online auctions. And I ended up with an Etsy store. So if we're going to look at the continuum of people and getting rid of their stuff, I'm over here, right? I am an extremist this way. On the other end of the spectrum over here are also extremists. What are these people doing? Well, some of them just take everything and dump it off at Goodwill. They don't want to deal with any of it. And others of them, they also don't want to deal with any of it, so they just leave it. The ultimate of being inconsiderate. They leave it in their garage, their basement, their house, all over the place for somebody else to take care of when they're gone. My goal with these segments on Angela's podcast is to help you come to somewhere here in the middle, find your own balance. Somewhere in between, you have to go out and get an auctioneer license and figure out how to get rid of each of your possessions on your own. That's me. And here, forgetting about everything, leaving it in your garage for your children to take care of when you're gone, or just loading your car off and just dumping it on Goodwill. So over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about this. The best way for you to get rid of your stuff, monetize, feel like you've made a positive contribution, and that you've gotten something out of it too. And now back to you, Angela.
So the other thing that I like to remind people to try if it seems comfortable to them or happy to help them out with, and I'm sure you do the same thing, is teaching them how to find out about local nonprofits, right? And then reaching out and seeing if those things are needed, right? Because it's no gift to a nonprofit if you're like, here, you clean up all my crap. You know, like that's not a gift. But if it's something that someone needs, like with the Giving Garden, like I had this great like little greenhouse item that was given to me for a photo shoot. It was really cool. I'm sure we could have found a use for it, but I was like, the Giving Garden doesn't need to find a use for it. They will have a use for it. They will
Right.
have a need for it for growing plants to feed community.
Yeah.
And, so then we took it over there because we knew that that was something that the team there could use. I just bring that up. Like, if people are having a hard time just picturing it going off into, wherever, you can play a more active role, like
Yeah.
do some research and find out where those things can end up.
Yeah, exactly. And my team and I go to great lengths to try to redistribute things in the community.
Yeah,
Like sometimes it's like crazy making lengths.
I
Where
believe
we're
it.
like, okay, we have, and all of my lead organizers, thankfully, all have share that philosophy of wanting to make sure stuff doesn't end up in a landfill that doesn't really need to be in a landfill.
Mhm.
So we'll go to sometimes like 2 or 3 different places
Mm.
just to donate things to where we think they have the best chance.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate your statement of honesty that most of the stuff donated does end up in land. That's something that I hardly ever tell clients that.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
some of my team members probably don't know that because that can be such a hindrance in the process of actually helping people get their home decluttered.
Mhm.
And I always want to figure out how can I bring this topic up without people feeling more shame or guilt. Because
Mhm.
our clients often do feel shame and guilt are huge, heavy emotions. It's like
Yeah.
they're already feeling ashamed at the state of their home, or they're already feeling guilty for spending too much money, or whatever the situation. Like we work with clients in all different situations, but I don't want to bring it up in a way that can make them feel worse about their
Mhm.
decisions. But I also want to shine a light on, okay, these were your actions in the past, no judgment. We're not
Mhm.
going to shame our past selves, but now that
Yeah.
you know better, how can you become a more mindful consumer in
Mhm.
the future? Because it also reduces your stress because then you don't have to manage 100 things.
Mhm.
So I don't know do you have ideas of how to bring that up with people or how to talk about that in a loving, gentle way?
And I bring it in sort of way. Yeah, I think the best time usually that I found to bring that up is once people are enjoying their uncluttered space, right? And it's like, okay, you've got this uncluttered space. But what's more important to me than job security? It's that you don't put yourself back in the same position because then all you've done is throw out a bunch of stuff and then bought more to replace it
Yeah,
and need to do it all over
exactly.
again. So the best time I find is, after everything has already been handled to be like, hey, we've responsibly rehoused these things. Every now and then we're all going to have to let some things go as our lives evolve, but contact a local school, see if they need the equipment or XYZ. And just keep in mind whenever you're tempted to buy something that maybe you don't actually need and you've asked yourself all those questions, the qualifying questions that we've discussed, and you're still feeling that urge, stop and think about the fact that 90% or whatever it is something
It's
staggering like that.
really atrocious. Like I
Yeah,
only found out a
it's
couple years ago
yeah,
the
it's
numbers,
egregious.
and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a good time to bring it up
Yeah.
because they've already gone through, the letting things go and they're seeing the
They
benefit.
feel liberated usually and
Mhm.
lighter and
And then also too, depending on the situation, this is not always a situation, but I also think it's helpful at that point to talk about the privilege of having things to let go. And that, again, that's not always the situation. Sometimes there are different things in play.
absolutely.
But I think acknowledging that and just understanding the privilege of being able to let certain things go is something to be acknowledged and just marinated on. And it's not something. It's just information. It's just information that we can use to better inform our future decisions, right? So.
Yeah, it's challenging. These are challenging topics. And so I do intend at some point to figure out how to incorporate the conversation about what I call slowing the inflow. I think you use similar language in some of your writing of okay, we've now decluttered, you've released your attachment to things, and to me I always say it's never just about the stuff.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of old identities, letting go of old hobbies, incomplete projects, processing grief, just being especially the downsizing clients, more about probably 60% of our clients now are in the senior category or the adult children of seniors. And it's usually busy professionals otherwise. But the seniors, it's that's a huge identity shift if they are about to retire or have just retired or are about to move. And so I often will talk to them about oh, this is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity for transformation, right? Those are my favorite projects where it's 30, 40 years worth of stuff. And it's who am I without this house full of stuff? Who am I without my identity in my work or my identity as a mom or whatever the situation is. And these are huge things for people. And so now at the end of projects, I'm wanting to figure out, okay, how can I have that conversation to support them so that they can have the behavior change.
Yeah.
I'm also a functional health coach. So I'm obsessed with coaching
All the
work.
things, yeah.
To think about like how do we create lasting behavior change? And it's an art and a science. But I know one of the things is just thinking about slowing the inflow and just being more mindful when you're out in the world buying things or somebody's giving you things. I know you talked about that in your blog too, of like how to just say no thank you to like marketing swag. And that's a huge thing because it's like somebody's giving you something. You're like, do I need another stress ball with the company logo? Like,
right. How many jar openers do I need?
Yeah. We don't really need that much. So Whitney, I know one of the things that you also wrote in your bio, in your quick little bio that I read at the beginning of this, is talking about co-stewardship. Tell me what that is.
So in the context of my work and our lives, we are co-stewards of a ancient crumbling farmhouse in France with our friends. It sounds very fancy. It's not fancy.
It does sound fancy.
But it is awesome. And I acknowledge how lucky I am to be able to say that and to live that. But yeah, co-stewardship is, for us, taking care of land together, taking care of the buildings together, just sharing space and not having any of the emphasis be on ownership, but on just like a shared experience and a shared space, and tending to something with a greater picture in mind as opposed to just like an individual's needs in mind. It is sometimes a challenge, usually just a real delight. And I think too, that's as it pertains to my life specifically, but obviously when you live in certain apartment buildings, townhouses, housing communities, depending on the context, like even our home in Venice, it was, there were a lot of shared spaces. And so there are shared items and whatnot. And that to me is co-stewardship as well, where we have, communal areas that we are tending together. And I don't know, I think it's the way people, of course, have always done things in certain countries and certain areas. But America has by design gotten away from that. And it's not for everybody, but for me, it feels like a really natural way to be.
Absolutely, because it's sharing the burden of day-to-day life and sharing not burden, but sharing
the responsibilities. Yeah.
I love it. So, okay, so you don't know this about me, and most people actually don't know this about me, but I have an interest in real estate. But what I would like to think of as like ethical real estate, property management, investing. And so I went through a little season of life just a few years ago of going to real estate conferences and learning about multifamily housing specifically. It was eye-opening, for one, because it was mostly older white men, naturally, because that's who has access to resources still many years later, right? I have lots of feelings things I could say about that more, but trying to, some of them were lovely, and a lot of them were just, the way they even spoke about people's homes was really disturbing to me, because it was just like the asset.
The transactional kind of component
it's so
of it.
Completely transactional. I'm like, these are people's homes. And for me, and because of my work, home is freaking sacred. Home is sacred. Home is our sanctuary in the world, whether it's 400 square feet or 8,000 square feet. Like that's sanctuary for people. And I think because I've moved around a handful of times in my life, and sometimes not by choice, I'm like, the stability of home is so vital. So to hear a bunch of mostly wealthy old white cishet men just being like, oh yeah, just raise the rent. Just raise the rent. I'm like, you're kicking people out of their homes. And so part of my interest in that field has evolved into thinking long-term future. How could I play a role in creating spaces for people with, I don't think I even heard the term co-stewardship until reading your blog. And I didn't really know what it meant until 2 minutes ago. But I'm like, oh, like co-stewarding the land and a property and having shared resources. Like one of my visions, again, just like long-term vision for my life that I'm not actively working towards other than talking about it, speaking it into existence.
You're working on it already.
Thank you. Exactly. is to own, manage, co-steward some kind of big giant apartment complex where you have shared resources, where you have, support support for that community and actually building community.
Mhm.
Like that's at the heart of so much of what I do, is how to connect people, how to alleviate loneliness in the world.
Mhm.
Like that is so like creating community, creating belonging, creating connection. So I'm curious of, based on your experience of even just co-stewarding this one crumbling small house in France, how can we create more of that in the world? Because it's like, I think American culture is so like individualism. We can do it all by ourselves. We're in our own little single family homes. We're in our own little apartments. And I think about that all the time. Even in my own little apartment building, there are 4 units with 4 people. And I'm like, why am I cooking dinner, doing dishes, like doing the same? Like, why are we not sharing these things of everyday life?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're all eating dinner probably by ourselves every night. Like what are we doing?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how can we transition from where we are now with individual homes, individual lives, to co-stewardship?
I love that question. The place that I would start is actually looking back at the history and having an understanding of how we got here. Because I feel like once we understand how we got here, we understand that it was by design, and that it is not wild or radical for us to want something different, and not wild or radical for us to live something different if that's the way we want to live and have the ability to live. So my latest read on that topic is called Brave New Home by Diana Lind, who is the head of like New Urban Order, I think, or I might be misstating that, but I think so. But it's just a great summary of how America got to the single family suburb housing.
I can't wait to read that.
It's great.
That sounds amazing.
And not that it needs to be, but it is a quick and super organized read that can really help you lean into whichever aspect of it you find to be like the most informative, going, and helping you make decisions going forward. But anyway, it's a great book. So I think the first thing is just learning how we got here, right? And then I think another part of it is psychological. It's destigmatizing it, right? Because in America, there's often a stigma about living in a multi-generational home, right? Like somehow you've failed, or somehow someone in the mix has failed. Someone has failed to meet some sort of criteria set by somebody else. Or if you are buying a place with friends or stewarding a place with friends, like, why couldn't you do it on your own? Like, why didn't you,
Yes,
there's the stigma.
I've felt that so many times.
And,
why is that a bad thing?
First off, I do think it's important to note that, like, I'm watching my friends in cities go through, like, leap through, like, flaming hurdles to just find any place that is stable that they can afford.
Yes.
And so I do want to say that, like, we should also, 2 things can be true. We should also live in a society and be fostering a society where if we do want to live as a single family or a single person, it should be affordable and it should be doable. So just acknowledging that. But if being in something that is more communally oriented strikes your fancy, I think that that takes psychological work to deprogram yourself from thinking that there is something wrong with that, right? And that, like, financial success is the metric by which we need to live. Like,
yes,
that's I understand why we think that, but that's ridiculous. It doesn't need to be that way. So that's a huge component of it. But then also, like, just starting small, right? Starting small, whether it's doing more of what you were talking about with respect to the buy nothing, like just getting more engaged in your community in various capacities, because all of a sudden you're flexing that muscle and learning what it feels like to not think of everything as yours and theirs, and just getting into that mindset of deprioritizing ownership, right? And
deprioritizing ownership
and prioritizing stewardship.
Yes.
Right. So
I love these words.
So I think that's, a helpful start. But also too, like, they're just, I think it takes some courage. Like, things are not always easy. It's like going into any relationship, right? Or any a job or anything. Like, it takes work. It takes work. You have to understand where other people are coming from.
You have to build your communication skills and your ability to navigate conflict, because that's inevitable when being in community with other humans.
And like, how do you handle jealousy? How do you handle certain things? And to me, that, for me personally, and this is not for everybody, for me personally, those are great things to work on. Like, I really enjoy that. It's not for everybody, and I get that. But like, for example, right now we're working with a foster organization that acquired this incredible building where the youth, transition age foster youth who are moving into it, they all have their individual bedrooms and bathrooms, but then they're on a property where certain spaces are shared. There's shared trauma healing spaces, shared for everybody, for all the units. But then the individual units themselves, there's a shared kitchen and a shared washer dryer, but everybody has their own bedroom, bathroom.
Amazing.
And even that sort of situation, right? I think that in America, we frequently think of that kind of living situation as like a college adjacent, a 20s something living situation. And that's fine if that's the case for you, but there are other instances and other stages of life where it could be completely appropriate and fulfilling and wonderful, and we can all lean into sharing things with one another. And if it doesn't work for you, then you really have a goal to work for, that you have a clear vision in mind of what does work for you and what you want, and that's okay too, you know?
Yeah, getting clear on our desires too. And for me, I think because we work with so many older clients, I'm in my mid-40s now, and so I'm thinking like 20 years ahead, 30 years ahead, assuming I live that long, hopefully, knock on wood. It's like, what do I want my life to look like? You know, and because I was married years ago, got a divorce in 2014, and have had a couple of relationships since then, but I'm currently single. And I'm like, what is a 45-year-old single person? How do I plan for the future? Right? And what if I don't, right? It's like lately the conversation with my therapist is, what if I don't ever meet like a long-term committed, like what if I don't get married again? What if I don't like find my person, as if that's a thing anyway? I don't even know if that's a thing anyway, really. So it's like, oh, how can I create a deeply fulfilling, connected life without prioritizing romantic partnership and like the traditional, like you have to get married and you have to buy a house and like the relationship ladder, like what you like the formula that we think we're supposed to follow. Because I'm like, do I actually even want that? And lately I'm like, I don't know that I do. And I've been reading so many inspiring articles, particularly of women as they're aging, where they will buy a house together or like buy some land and build it. Like I can't remember the name of it. I just read it the other day, but there's some women in Texas, like 10 of them or something, that bought some land, like 30 minutes outside of the city, and built a bunch of tiny houses there.
Awesome.
And they live in communities. So they just like giant shared outdoor kitchen. They said it is just a delight. They're like, we don't have to wear bras ever. There are no men around. Like,
yes.
I was like, oh, like, I'm like, I don't think I want that. I love men. Men are wonderful. I'm like, I don't think I would want that kind of life exactly, but I love knowing that there are people that are thinking about these things and just doing them. Like one woman just bought the land, bought her tiny house, and then invited other women and like rents out the other little plot. So again, it's still not quite deprioritizing ownership, but they share resources. They share, it's like just a variation of like, how do we get from the current housing structures and pricing and real estate industry that's making lots of money? How do we navigate away from that and create, like using what we already have, like physical structures that we already have, but then building in that co-stewardship feeling, right? Like I love the idea, and that's again something I'm just craving doing that at some point when I have more time and capacity and more financial resources, to be like, I just want to buy an apartment complex and then figure out how to set the intention of making that an intentional community or co-living or whatever. And so I love the idea of even just sharing resources to start with, and just thinking about it, and kind of like you said, of getting out of that mindset of I need to own everything. I need to own my, like and I know like my generation and younger, homeownership is not accessible for most of us, even if we wanted it. Right. And then also most of the financial advice I've been hearing is that homeownership is often not a good financial decision for people my generation and younger.
Interesting.
Like it's not as far as like an actual investment financially, that can potentially destroy you. Like if you don't have the money in savings or whatever to fix your roof or to fix plumbing or to fix major electrical. You're like, yes, plumbing.
I think about it all the time. I think about that all the time. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we rented our place in California, the first week we moved in, the pipes went out, and it was one of those things where like 6 inches this way was the owner's responsibility to fix, and then 6 inches that way it was like the city's jurisdiction, and he got slapped with something to me exorbitant, like a $30,000 plumbing situation, and we were like, we could never have done this, even in some world that I cannot conceive of. Even if we had bought this property somehow, we would then not be able to handle that whatsoever. That's another great thing about co-stewardship, though, is that like when we bought this house in France, like I said, it is crumbling. We knew from the get-go that it was crumbling. We knew what we were getting into. And we knew that we were going to have to fix the roof. And it's an original Loa's roof. It's like the stones that needed to be like cleaned and it's just, you don't go up there with a power sprayer. Like it needs to be taken off by hand and then nailed back again. We knew it was a whole thing, even though it's a small space and a small roof. But we knew that together, even though it was still a big financial burden at my income level, and I think everybody's income level, we're pretty transparent with our finances, that it was doable because we were sharing that responsibility together.
Yes, what a relief.
Whereas like, there's no way on this green planet that I could have ever done that on my own. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, sorry, I kind of like cut into that, but
no,
I think about
perfect.
that all the time.
That was perfect. I mean, I thought that 10 years ago, if you were like, do you want to own a house someday? I would have said absolutely yes, without question. I think just a lot of it was just the conditioning. It's like I desire stability in my living environment. And that's why I was thinking I want to own a house. But then now that I have friends who own houses, I've heard all the horror stories. Not that I want to discourage anybody from home ownership. If that's what they really feel called to, genuinely, not just cultural conditioning, but like actual, like, oh, I want to own a house because I want X, Y, Z, right? Like actual, like for sure reasons. But I've seen and heard all of the benefits of owning a home, and also based on the real estate conferences I went to a few years ago, we're becoming a nation of renters.
Yeah,
some of us not by choice.
No one can afford anything.
Many of us not by choice, but some of us also by choice too. Like even some of the I'm thinking of Ramit Sethi of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I don't know if you're familiar.
No.
He started out as like a finance guru, but I love him. Like politically, he's very progressive and aligned for me. And he loves to empower people and talk about, like he has a podcast even. It's Money for Couples.
Okay.
And he has a book that was I Will Teach You. Anyway, I've been following him for years. I love his work, but I think right now, he got married just like a year or two ago, but this whole time he's like, I prefer to rent. And here's why. Like he has, I think, a place he rents in New York and a place he rents in LA. And he has the freedom and flexibility to have two homes that he lives in. But he said, I don't want to own a home because it's a lot of responsibility and maintenance. And you can't just call, a maintenance property manager or whatever and have something fixed. You have to fix it. It's all of the responsibilities on you. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, I don't want that. As a single person, I don't want to be responsible for all the lawn care and the plumbing and the roof and the whatever might break in my home. So even in my shared apartment complex or apartment building that I live in now, it's like if something breaks, at least other people also are experiencing that.
Yeah. It also helps with the urgency of it, doesn't it?
Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
So each of us are like, let's all submit a maintenance request. And we usually have to do a couple times before the landlord actually does anything, but we all like rally together. And again, it just creates that feeling of community and that feeling of not aloneness, for lack of a better word, right? So I love the idea of doing more and more of that in the world. And like, kudos to you for having the courage to go with other people and be like, okay, let's buy some crumbling old tiny house in France.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Okay, so we only have like 5 minutes left, but I would love to hear more about that because I'm so intrigued. How did that... I mean, that probably is more than a 5-minute story.
Yeah, I'm like, were the cliff notes of that. So it's a region with which I'm very familiar, and our co-stewards are very familiar with this region as well. We have all lived and worked there since we were in our early 20s.
Okay.
And none of us were carrying around like sacks of money to do this. I just need to be very clear about that as it pertains to like perhaps helping other people on that journey and just being transparent about it. But we were visiting that region regularly, like I said, for work and pleasure. And we never were staying in a space of our own, which is fine. We were happy with rented spaces. I mean, it's one of the things we're just talking about, right? We're happy with sharing spaces, but the availability of those spaces in a very small village isn't always robust. So we were like, well, we're spending all this money and we're, not guaranteed anything. So like, what if we go into something together as like potentially a retirement plan? And with climate change, nothing is a given. So I am not fooling myself into thinking that it's forever going to be there and be there in that state. It is my hope that it is forever there and that it is my retirement plan, but it is not a perfect one. So we all, it was interesting because during COVID, I was living in Los Angeles, as was one of the other co-stewards, and there's 9 of us, but there are 3 parties. Wow. There are 9 of us in total, but 3 parties. and one of them is in LA and one of them is outside of LA. And I happened to share during COVID, as we're texting and Zooming and doing all the things, that I had been looking at this one parcel because it just had checked all the boxes, and like, gosh, and in the dream world, wouldn't this be great? Yeah. And the co-steward who I was texting was like, we've been looking at that one too. And there was no moment of like, they were instantly like in that text exchange was like, oh my gosh, if we do this together, we could actually do this. Yes. Like, are you interested in that, or would we kill each other? And then it was like, no, like, yes, like this makes it doable. And also like now we can see each other no matter, because it's during COVID and you realize how quickly you can not be able to see people that you love. Yes. And like, how can you cultivate a life where you do get to see people that you love, no matter the outside conditions, hopefully. And so that started a almost year-long process of working with people that we know in the region, because we couldn't travel there. It was sight unseen.
Wow.
So almost a year-long process of going through the steps of acquiring this land, this property, in a country that really loves their paperwork. Mm-hmm. and so that's how it came to be. So I've known them for a really long time. I trust them with everything. We have birthed babies together. Mm-hmm. We have been each other's like bedside, medical caretakers. Mm-hmm. We've experienced death and trauma and joy and growth and all the things together. And I trust them with everything. My children, I say my money, the money, everything. So, it's a no-brainer for me. And I know that not everybody has that situation. It's very specific, but I do think there are several other ways to go about, so many creative ways to live this life.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, I get chills, Whitney. I love hearing that story. Now I want to have more questions. I want to know more. We can talk offline some other time. I would love to take you to tea or coffee or whatever. So I'm noticing a thread in a lot of our conversation today just about relationships, mm-hmm. like prioritizing relationships over stuff, mm-hmm. and figuring out how to get creative, right? Mm-hmm. How to get creative in this one little life that we have. It's like we don't have to just go to a 9 to 5. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur at heart too. So after 12 years of working for other people and getting away from that life, I'm like, oh, like there are so many other options, so many like infinite possibilities when we are well-resourced. Yeah. And to me, the best way to get well-resourced is relationships and community.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So where can people find you? Do you want to give, I know you have multiple businesses. I don't totally understand all of what you do, honestly.
I know, you're not the only one. I don't understand what I do half the time. I just, like I said, I certainly have no elevator pitch, but yeah. So my social handles are Whitney Leigh Morris.
And it's Leigh, Leigh.
Yes, thank you, Leigh. And then some of the nonprofit efforts that we do, because again, like I feel like home design and home care, again, should extend beyond our four walls and look towards the one beautiful home we all share. So onesharedhome.org is where people can find information about that. And then my website is whitneyleighmorris.com. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share that. I also have a book called Small Space Style and a newsletter called Rightsizing.
Oh yeah, on Substack.
I'm
obsessed with it, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And your Instagram, your visual storytelling is so compelling. It's like every time I'm like, oh, these photos are just like, it's like creating magical space and then being able to document it and having that energy transmit through a screen, I think is such a gift.
Thank you.
So everybody please go look at all of her things, because she has beautiful photos everywhere on your website, on your Instagram, on Substack. And I love your words too.
Thank you.
So thank you again for your time.
I appreciate it.
It's been lovely. Awesome. So stay tuned for the next episode of Making Space with Angela Dragon. Thank you for joining us, and please leave some comments. Let us know what resonated for you and what were some of your insights and takeaways from our conversation today.